You may take your jackets off here. Has provided these gratis and said use them for the money proceedings for Keep Talking. And I said, well, we'll probably spend most of it on promoting the latest book, actually. But we're offering those at £10 each. They're different to original prices, but I'll keep it simple. Now, I've been working quite a lot with the publisher, John Paul Leonard. It's a one-man business on a book by Hussein Mohammed Al-Amili, who was one of our regulars in the early days of Keep Talking. One of the very, very few Muslims who would come along. And Muslims are very, very cautious about getting caught up in anything where they can be called extremists and anti-Semitic and so on. So that shows something of his character. He had spent just under 2 months in Saddam's prison, the Amun Security Center in Baghdad. He's not quite sure why, but he's got a pretty good idea. A year or two afterwards, he was approached by one of the inmates in the prison who said, yes, I'm your friend, I'm a friend, but I'd advise you to get out of the country. He was a spy planted amongst the prisoners. And so Hussein spent 10 years in other countries before he settled in London. And that's where I first met him, at the London Esperanto Club. I'm not used to needing glasses for reading since my cataract operation. So I was caught out unawares. He wrote, "This is the story of a 2-month seminar, in inverted commas, inside prison, which, in a sad way, shed more light for me about my homeland, Iraq. These are glimpses from inside an evil regime sponsored by evil powers. I think I ought to explain that in a war situation, we can all do evil things and we all commit atrocities. Iraq was under threat of subversion from this country and America, and the history of Iraq was of leaders being put in place by the CIA or the British and then trying to break free for Iraq, and then being replaced in turn. Saddam Hussein was the latest in this series, and security was very, very strict. And well, we've had imprisonment without trial in Northern Ireland. We've had it in London, in Belmarsh, with Julian Assange. But he was in solitary confinement. Hussein wasn't. In prison, he wrote, you may have a better view of what is going on out there in freedom. I'll read the next bit, yeah. In spite of prison and exile for nothing more than an interest in Esperanto, which is pretty sure what it was, Hussein al-Amili was a staunch advocate for peace and opponent of the war on Saddam Hussein, a war on his beloved people and homeland. So it's as if he'd jumped sides, but he hadn't jumped philosophy. He was wanting democracy in Iraq, and jumped over here from the frying pan into the fire pretty well, though he did acknowledge he had the freedom here, as long as he didn't push things too far. But he was demonstrating in Trafalgar Square quite a lot, with Brian Hoare and others, and eventually me when I came into the Truth Movement in December 2006. The bulk of that book is stories and anecdotes that he got by talking to fellow prisoners. So it's very much a grassroots analysis of the situation. I think most of us looked at the top of what was going on. And my speciality, having come into this through the Esperanto movement, was people I knew. People, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. It's that sort of thing. And they were going fanatical about apparent trivia. Then I'd inquire and discover big things. So some of these stories are about how people ended up in the Amun Security Centre in the first place. And most of those seem quite trivial. And you have to wonder what's the real reason. Well, some of them had a dispute with another Iraqi who had friends in high places, that sort of thing. In his case, well, he started off professional life as a clergyman, a preacher amongst the Bedouins, like his father, but he was a novice. He said, I wasn't really very good at it because I tended to burst out laughing. And he had a tremendous sense of humour. It was a humour at the irony of situations. On one occasion, he saw the irony of a situation. He'd been invited to an academic meeting in Baghdad, and they said, oh, the venue's been changed. They brought in buses, loaded the people into the buses, and then headed off to the Iranian border because they thought they were all Kurds. Sorry, not Kurds, Iranians from the Ottoman Empire when they'd have Ottoman passports. And Hussein got his papers out and showed them, what are you doing here? I don't know. So they shoved him out, and he had a long, long walk to the nearest Kurdish village. And he laughed to himself, and they said, wipe that smile off your face, stop giggling, you know. It was very much that atmosphere. So he was a preacher turned trader, and over a few years he built a very nice house in the posh area of Baghdad, south of the river Tigris. And he had at one stage a pile of his wares outside in front of his house. And the security came along and arrested him. What am I being arrested for? You'll find out when you get there. So when he got to the Amun prison, the interrogator had a pile of forms, blank forms, all pre-signed. And they put illegal storage of wares. Well, the solicitor said it wasn't illegal. So afterwards, they cleared it all up. And Tariq Aziz, who I think a little after that, became Deputy Prime Minister of Iraq, built a house there, built his own house there. So he became Tariq Aziz's neighbour, and he thinks that that may have had something to do with it. But the real reason was his promotion of Esperanto in Iraq. This was autumn 1979. In 1980, in May, in 2 issues of Athara, which was the party national newspaper, there was an article headed, Esperanto is the hidden face of Zionism. It wasn't true. I mean, Simon Hoff was Jewish, but he turned against Zionism once he realized the direction it was following. This was before Herzl had published, but he picked up on it. He said, to call all the Jews one people is like calling all people with red hair one people. But that's a different story. That was a double-page spread in 2 issues. I tried to get hold of it, and just those 2 issues were missing in the British Library. He said, he told me that he'd sent a copy to the Universal Esperanto Association in Rotterdam, and they lost it. The president did offer to take his case up with the United Nations. He said, no, thank you. Transpired that the president was quite a close friend of George Soros. And so the parallels are now emerging. So that was after he'd come out. And after he came out, his business collapsed because they were harassing him. And then one of the inmates came, I'm your friend, yes. Whereas actually it looks as if he was a spy set amongst them, and warned him that he'd better get out of the country. In London, he was campaigning firstly against the sanctions, which I didn't understand at first, because I had not come into the truth movement by then. It was through the Esperanto thing that I came in December 2006, when I found all my grassroots stuff was big. And he wanted to publish that book in English. He'd already published it in Esperanto, but with added material. And he was adding material about his own campaigning, about Tony Blair and so on. And he asked me to add material as well as editing the book and getting it published. So I've got some material in there. I draw attention to, the 3 appendixes that I've put in, drawing attention, for instance, to conflict initiation, which is what the Americans call it. Someone took a video of an American think tank discussing how to create a problem with Iran, to get the president into war with Iran. And how on earth that got onto the internet, I don't know. But he says conflict initiation isn't easy, and so on and so on. So we know that is going on, and it's that sort of material that I've put in to bridge the gap between Hussein's experiences and my own experiences and research. I was quite honoured to be asked to do that. We hoped to get out a preprint copy before he died 10 years ago. We didn't quite manage it. Then I thought the publisher had lost interest. Several years later, he emailed me, oh, what about that book, The Prisoner's Diary? And, right. We had a lot of work to do, but now here it is. And
how much is it selling for you?
All these books are £10. We agreed £10 for each one. And it's called A Prisoner's Diary, Insights from Saddam's Iraq, by Hussein Al-Amali, and with me as contributor. Now, Hussein had a good sense of humour. irony. He once talked about me about legal theft in one club that he'd been the treasurer of, with a chuckle. And I think it's that sense of humour that got him through these experiences. Apparently he was 87 when he died. One of his friends, mutual friend, who had helped him in his latest days, is still a clinical psychologist in war trauma. Something we never think about, war trauma. And Clarita Velikova is with us here this evening, and I'd like to invite Clarita to say just a few words about her experiences with Hussein.
Thank you. Good evening. I remember Mr. Al-Amili as one of those people who couldn't be unnoticed or forgotten, warmly welcoming and ready to help or give his advice even to strangers. Wherever he was, people around him were either silently listening to him or loudly laughing, but never being indifferent. And anyone whom he has met still shares vivid memories of him. Being already in his 80s, his curiosity towards people and to everything in life was remarkable, and were his wisdom and also his often expressed gratitude for the shelter given to him in this country. He was an endless source of stories, and he often joked, hoping to live long till 107, like his father, while having only one modest dream: to have one room. This is what he repeated even just 2-3 days before he died in the hospital. One room where to write more books, as he had so much more to say to people and so much love to give them. As he wrote in his book of Arabic wisdom, this one, which was published in 2003, love comes down from heaven. Hatred has no good place to come from. He was unable to fulfill all his dreams, but one of his last books has published, and I'm sure his soul, wherever it is sending love and gratitude to all of you for this event today, and especially to Mr. Ian Fantom for his great effort resulting in publishing of his book Prisoner's Diary, which he has presented today. Thank you.